Okay, so one night I got off night shift. Me and Simone are laying in the bed. I'm trying to go to sleep. Simone isn't feeling well, so she stayed home from school. So we're both trying to just nap, right? And so next thing you know, I'm thinking Simone is getting out of bed. I feel a lot of movement down near my feet. Okay, and so I'm like, okay, she's going to the bathroom. So I snuggle up under the cover, and I hear my daughter say, "Stop." And she taps me and she said, mommy, like she's panicking. And so I moved the curtain, like, what's wrong? What's going on? She was like, tell him to stop jumping on the bed. You might have to move out. So fast forward, I have to act brave, and I look down at the foot of the bed, and you can see the bed, just the moving. Like, you can see that. And I was like, okay, I gotta be brave. And I said, hey, cut that out. The jumping stopped. And so my daughter, I was like, I looked at her and I said, is this why you won't sleep in your room? Because she's always in my room. She never sleeps in her room unless she's taking a nap during the daytime. She don't even play like that. And so next thing you know, she was just like, yeah, because they always coming out of the closet. Now, I went to her closet, prayed in her closet, and I felt just nothing but overwhelmed. And I was like, maybe there is a portal. Now, mind you, when I was younger, and I used to see the spirits all the time, I think I told y'all about how I had this dresser, and every single time something will always come from on the side of that dresser. And it will always be a bright light right before. Every single time. Fast forward, I'm painting right now. I'm finishing up the kitchen. And while I'm using a roller to paint, I feel somebody tugging on my pants leg. So I think it's Simone. I look down and nobody's there. So then I turn around and I see Simone go to the refrigerator. And I was like, oh, maybe she was trying to ask me if she can get something out of the refrigerator. But then I asked her, I said, hey, I said, you just came over here and tapped mommy or tugged on my leg? And she was like, no. Okay, so one of the rules in my house is do not touch my blinds. Don't go near my blinds. Nothing like that. Simone doesn't touch or do anything like that, right? So I'm folding clothes in the living room. And I had this towel. Like, I brought the towel up in front of my face, and it dropped. As soon as it dropped, I, leaned down to grab it. And I look up and I see this little boy standing in front of our window. And he's looking out the blinds. And Simone, she just happens to come from the back. And she said, "Ooh, he touching your blinds?" So I told him, I was like, you can't stay here. You can't stay. Because one thing my mom always told me is don't let them think that they can stay in your house. Because she always said that spirit thinks they can get comfortable, they'll go and get 3 more. She always told me that. So I let him know he couldn't stay. And Simone was, she felt bad. She's like, but what if he has nowhere to go? And as soon as she said that, he turned around and looked at her. And I said, we ain't inviting nobody now. I said, you have to go. He goes. That's it. I haven't seen him since. But of course, Simone, her gift is so strong, and I believe it's so much stronger than mine, especially at her age. But man, when I tell you, it has been a struggle. It has been a huge struggle dealing with this. And now I see what my mom went through when I was younger and when my brother was younger.
Welcome back to another episode of Tea After Midnight. Just a little series where we have some tea to keep it nice and classy, but I also tell you scary stories. Tonight's story is very scary, so with that being said, grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you a scary story. I am absolutely obsessed with this tea. This is the Benner tea that you can get from Aldi. It's the green tea in the flavor pomegranate. Easily has become my favorite tea. This story comes from Carrie. My name is Carrie, and I have a few spooky stories that happened to me and several friends/family members when I was a teenager. These probably won't be as spooky as plenty of the ones you've gotten before, but they are pretty crazy. It's not just one thing that happened, but several different things that happened from the time I was around 16 until I was in my early 20s. I lived in Mississippi most of my life, raised there, and moved to Tennessee in 2021. The town I lived in was so small you would miss it if you blinked. It was a fairly rural place, and where my house was, we were surrounded by trees and woods. There was a creek that ran next to my house, and my siblings and I used to play in that creek all the time, and we would always find arrowheads and things like that. Fast forward to when I was around 16. I'm now 32. A few friends, my boyfriend at the time, and I decided it would be a fun idea to play with a Ouija board in my home. Not a fun idea. For weeks after that, I always felt like there was someone or something standing in the corner of my room watching me at night as I slept. I distinctly remember one night trying to go to sleep, and just as I was about to doze off, I heard my name being whispered. I was in that state of half asleep, half awake, so I just thought I was hearing things until I heard it again. As soon as I heard it again, I yelled out, "Leave me alone and let me sleep." I didn't hear it again after that. Fast forward again a few years later. 2 friends of mine were at my house. I'll explain the layout of my house so you can get an idea of where we all were at the time of the occurrence. We had 2 double-wide trailers hooked together to make a T formation, and when you walked in my front door, you were walking into the living room, and my bedroom was off to the left. You would then walk into a dining room area with the laundry room off to the left, and to the right you would go around a corner into my kitchen. Right past the kitchen was a den area that my mother had walled in and made into a closet, and to the right was a spare bedroom and a spare bathroom. Keep going down the small hallway and through a door, that's where you would enter my mother's house, into the laundry room, which opened up into the kitchen and living area. Her bedroom was off to the left, and another bedroom and bathroom off to the right of the kitchen, and her office to the left. On the night in question, I was in my mom's office on her computer, downloading music on If You Know, You Know. One of my friends was in the living room and the other end of the house, and the other friend was in my bedroom with the door closed. As I was downloading music, I remember downloading one song, and when I played it played back really distorted. If you're familiar with back then, that wouldn't have been strange because some of the songs were just corrupted and would play wrong and you would move on to the next one. The strange thing was, normally, if a song was corrupt, it would play wrong every time. But when I played the song back again, it played perfectly fine. For some reason, this didn't set right with me, and I got the horrible sense of dread that washed over me that I couldn't explain. Something told me I needed to stop what I was doing and go check on my 2 friends, and most importantly, get out of that room. As I got back into my side of the house and made it to my first friend, his face was pale white and was curled up on the couch, looking clearly shaken up. When I asked him what happened, he said he was playing on his laptop and heard my dog outside start barking uncontrollably. Then he heard what sounded like something large, like the size of a car, slam into the side of the house, and even felt the house shake. I didn't feel any of this in the room I was in, and I will also preface this by saying the dog never barked at anything, ever. Even when other animals came into the yard, she never barked at anyone or anything. But as I was talking to him, I could hear her going absolutely crazy. When I looked outside, she was facing my front door at the bottom of my steps, still barking, but there was absolutely nothing out there that could have made that noise he described. Right around the same time we were looking outside, my other friend came out of my bedroom, visibly shaken. When we asked him what happened, he just shook his head and just kept repeating, "We need to go," and wouldn't tell us what happened. I still to this day have no idea what he saw or heard. I also want to add that at this time I had a piano with a mirror attached to it in my living room against the front wall right next to my front door. So the piano and mirror were facing my dining area and entrance to my laundry room. As we were all standing there trying to figure out what was going on, I was standing facing this piano with the dining area at my back, and both of my friends were facing me. I looked up into the mirror of this piano, and I very clearly saw something run out of my laundry room into my kitchen area. It was like a black shadow. I immediately looked through the little window that was open from my living room into the kitchen, and I saw nothing. The next day I'm telling my mom what we saw and experienced, and she said around the same time all of that was happening to us, she woke up because she felt something staring at her. And when she opened her eyes, she saw a woman in all white with glowing white eyes, hovering parallel to her right over her, probably an inch from her face. She said she closed her eyes quickly for a few seconds, and when she opened them, it was gone. She also had several instances throughout my childhood where she would hear something meow in her room shortly after she had put one of her cats down. And there were several occasions where she said my dad would be gone out of town, and she would feel someone get into bed with her or sit on the edge of her bed. She continued to experience this even after they had divorced and he moved out. Several years after all of this happened, my brother, not biologically, just a close friend I grew up with, moved in with us. He told me of several times that he would go into the kitchen at night and would see things move out of the corner of his eye. He also said that he would be there alone and would sometimes hear someone walk through my living room, and he would go to check to see if I was home, but no one would be there. He said at one point he leaned over to look through the window in my kitchen that led into my dining room, and he felt a breath on the back of his neck. I'm just going to say that I think something came through that Ouija board, which is absolutely terrifying to think about, but honestly what I'm most scared about is that all three of them in that house that night had a separate encounter. Carrie heard something whisper her name several times, the other friend heard something slam into the side of the house, and then the other friend is too terrified to even tell anybody what they saw. That's actually so terrifying. But then Carrie also sees a black shadow in the mirror's reflection. But then years later, her brother comes to live with them, and then he feels something breathe on the back of his neck. If that were me, I'd be packed up and moved out that night. No. I am so scared. Like, when I hear stories of something physically touching you that you can't see, or breathing on you, or whispering a name, no. Cut the cameras, we're done, pack it up, we're gone. But Carrie, thank you so much for sending in your story, but we would love to hear any other experiences that you've had or any updates on this. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share, I would love to hear them. They can be about any scary story that you've experienced. You can email me at the email on the screen or the email that's going to be in the caption of this video. But as always, you guys, I love you so much, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you have the best night, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
I have a spooky bedtime story for you. This story just keeps getting weirder and weirder. It's called The Fog is Weird Tonight, and it was submitted by a listener named Kat. If you're new here, this is Spooky Scary Storytime, the series where we share listeners' allegedly true stories about the creepiest or most unsettling things that they've ever experienced. And Kat says that she's lived in the same small mill town in Washington State for the past 30 years, but the story really starts when she, her husband, and their children moved into a new apartment. About 2 months after moving in, she woke up around 4 in the morning to pack her husband's lunch and set out his clothes for the day as she normally did. She kissed him goodbye, and about 5 a.m. she went out to her balcony to have some coffee and sit outside. It was on the second floor of the building, and she watched him walk across the parking lot, enter his truck, and pull out of the parking lot. She had just sat down in the balcony chair when all of a sudden from the ground level she heard her name being called, and it was her husband's voice, and he was saying, "Cat, Cat." So she looked over the balcony thinking maybe she missed him pull back in, maybe he had forgotten something, but she didn't see him. She didn't see his vehicle, so she thought maybe she imagined it, or maybe there was somebody else in the building who was named Cat, and her husband had a similar voice. She was still looking over the balcony. She heard whistling coming from the other direction, so she turned her head to look, and it wasn't somebody whistling a song. It was alternating between high and low notes. So she turned her head, and as she did, the whistling changed direction, and now it was coming from the woods behind the building. She turned her head in that direction to try to determine the source of the sound, but as she turned her head, the whistling changed direction again. Thoroughly weirded out, she decided she must just be sleep deprived and decided to go back inside, close the balcony door, and went back to sleep. But shortly after falling back asleep, she was awoken by a loud thud coming from her balcony. So she left her bedroom and went out into the living area, where she saw her balcony door was now swung wide open. Walked across the living room and closed the balcony door, and she says her balcony is about 12 feet off the ground. She didn't understand how it opened, but thought maybe she didn't close it all the way. But she says that night is really the start of all of the strange occurrences that she and her family experienced. Shortly after that, she was home alone one day when she heard one of her children call "Mom" from the other room. Her children were at school. After that, her children started complaining about hearing giggling coming from another empty bedroom. Her family dog, who up until this point had been very well behaved, started going berserk at night, growling and barking and snarling at shadows, appeared seemingly without source on walls or under doors. Children started hearing her calling them when they were home and she hadn't called them. And one night her son, who was 14 at the time, woke up and said that he had heard strange whisperings in another language in his ear as he slept. That said, she told her son to just ignore it and go back to sleep. But she didn't feel like whatever was in their apartment was bad or malicious. She didn't get an evil feeling from it. And she says, in fact, one night she thought that it actually saved her. She wasn't feeling well and went to get some water from the kitchen. It was the middle of the night. She was groggy and she almost fell down the stairs, but she felt someone grab her from behind and pull her back, so she fell flat on the floor instead of forward down the stairs. She assumed it was her oldest child, but when she turned around, no one was there. She also noticed that anytime the family was missing something, they would just say out loud, "I'm looking for my keys," or "I'm looking for my ring." And then whatever object they were missing would just show up on the coffee table. We lived in the apartment for 3 years, and while these experiences never lessened, they became so accustomed to them that they started calling this energy their invisible roommate. She says they all just kind of accepted that there is some kind of presence there. But here's where things get spooky again. Says in December, she and her oldest child decided to take a walk to their local store. They often do this, and it's only about an 8-minute walk from their apartment to this store that they frequent. And the walk is well lit, there's streetlights everywhere. And with this being December, there were Christmas lights all over their town. And she says their town is only about 500 people. So it's normally pretty quiet as it was, but that night was particularly quiet. And she said the fog was just so thick that night that something felt off. There was no one out walking, but it wasn't the emptiness of the streets or the fog. She said that she's from the Pacific Northwest. She's used to that. It just felt like she was being watched. But she didn't want to freak out her son, so she decided she wasn't going to say anything about it. But about halfway to the store, they stopped at an ATM. And as she was pulling money out, her son says, "Mom," in this shaky voice. And she looks at him and he says, "It feels like we're being watched from every single direction." As I said, she had kept her own feeling to herself, but when he said this, that freaked her out more. And he says, "It feels like we're being hunted." And that's when she realized that none of the Christmas lights on their street were turned on. None of their neighbors who usually hung out on their front porches were outside. None of the neighborhood dogs were barking. There was no sound of wind. In fact, there was no sound at all. There was no traffic on the street, and she said this was abnormal because even though their town is small, it was 7 p.m. on a Friday. By this point, the fog had gotten so thick that it was almost snuffing out the lights from the street lights. But they're approaching the store, and through the window, they can see their favorite cashier who's staring at them, and she has this strange look on their face. So they quickly enter, they grab their items, and they go to the counter. As Kat is paying, she's talking to the cashier about the fog. She said, "I've never seen anything like this." And the cashier says, "Yeah, we haven't even had any regulars come in tonight since the fog rolled in. And I think the fog is messing with the security cameras." And Kat says, "What do you mean?" Cashier says, "Well, I was watching the security cameras when you two were approaching the store, and on the cameras, it looked like there was a dark shadow of a silhouette of a person following you, but when I looked outside, there was no one behind you." That said, she felt her blood run cold, but the cashier says, "Don't worry, I think it's just the fog messing with the security cameras, but please walk safe. The fog is weird tonight." Kat and her son left the store and were being very vigilant, looking around them, making sure that they were not being followed. But she said that at one point during their walk, about halfway home, she heard what sounded like two hoof prints on the pavement behind them. Both of them turned to look, but there was nobody there. They began walking again, and the hoof prints resumed. But she said it was distinctly two, not four like a horse. Every time they turned around, the sound would stop, but when they began walking again, it would follow. Picked up the pace and were almost home, and they were passing a house owned by a sweet elderly couple that they know. The house was dark, but as they passed, the living room light turned on, and Kat looked at the house and saw that the man was standing in the window. She said the look on his face chilled her because he was smiling at them with this cold, calculated smile that didn't reach his eyes. Really creeped out, Kat waved at him as she normally did, but he didn't react, and the light switched off behind him. Said her son was terrified, and she just told him, "Let's just get home as quickly as we can." So they picked up the pace again. But as they did, the sound of hooves behind them also picked up the pace. Just before they reached their apartment building, they were passing a church with pine trees outside. And Kat said she doesn't know where this thought came from, but something just popped into her head and it said, "Pick some pine needles up and give them to your son." Kat said this is unlike her. She doesn't know why she had this feeling to pick up the pine needles, but it was just this intrusive thought, this gut feeling. And so she did as she was instructed. And holding the pine needles, she says they reached their apartment building. And as soon as they did, this feeling of warmth washed over them and they felt like they were instinctually safe. All of them immediately collapsed onto the couches upon entering their unit. And her husband said, "What happened?" And she told him the story. And he said, "I think it was just the fog. I think you two were letting your imaginations run wild." But she said they both distinctly heard the sound of the hooves behind them. Both witnessed their elderly neighbor staring at them with a creepy smile. And both felt the feeling of being safe once they picked up the pine needles. But says she believes they were being followed by something, and that feeling of warmth that they both experienced was the entity, their invisible roommate, that was trying to protect them and comfort them. Says she knows that what she and her son experienced was very real, but she's sharing this because she's curious to know what you all think the entity in their apartment is. Not only that, but what was in the fog, and what was the sound of the hooves, and what did the pine needles have to do with anything? Says she really is curious as to what others think, and she will be reading and responding to the comments. She also said She's had an aura reading done, and the person that did the reading told her that she was a beacon, but she also doesn't understand what that means. So let her know if you have thoughts on what that means too. And if you have a spooky, scary story that you think nobody would believe or that you've been too afraid to share until now, send it in. This community would love to hear it.
I got an email from somebody who said that they had a mimic in their house that was mimicking their dead grandmother. This is one of the scariest mimic stories I've ever heard. We're gonna call this person Bailey. So Bailey lives in Romania, and she lives at the edge of a pretty big city. She's lived there all her life. Now, a little while ago, her grandmother was sick. Her grandmother was passing away, unfortunately. So her grandmother had to go to the hospital. She's in the hospital, and the doctors are finally like, listen, go home, rest until the rest of your time here. So she was basically going home to pass away in a peaceful manner. So Bailey lived 8 hours away from the hospital, but her grandmother wanted to spend the rest of her time with her family, with Bailey's family. And so Bailey's dad went to go get her and drove her back the 8 hours back to their house. So they get back to the house, and when she gets to the house, she specifically asked to sleep in Bailey's room. Now, it's important to note that Bailey's room is the only room with a cross and a Bible in it. Bailey is obviously okay with this, right? Her grandmother is sick. She wants her to be comfortable. So Bailey goes to sleep on the couch downstairs. So she goes downstairs. She falls asleep on the couch, and she falls asleep fairly quickly, and she's sleeping like a baby when suddenly she just wakes up out of nowhere, and she has this very weird feeling like something is watching her. Now, just so you can kind of get a picture of this, they have windows on 3 walls that are connected. The couch that she was sleeping on was next to the 4th wall that did not have a window. So wherever she looked, she was looking out the window. On the right wall is a side table with a clock and a TV. And when she looks directly in front of her, there are 2 walls with windows. Now, she's sleeping on her right side. So the first thing that she sees when she opens her eyes is she sees the clock, and she sees that it's 2 a.m. But then she sees something kind of at the corner of her eye, and she kind of veers her eyes over to the left, and she sees something that does not belong in the room. What she sees horrifies her. It is this extremely tall figure, completely black figure. It is so tall that it has to kneel down to look at her, which is what it is doing. It is kneeling down like this, looking at her. If it wasn't kneeling down, it would have gone through the ceiling. That's how tall it was. As it's kneeling down, it's just looking at her like this, and it's just waving at her like this. So then it starts doing this. It starts pointing to one area of the wall. And then you know how someone lifts their hands up like this with both of their hands, and they go like, I don't know. So it would point to one area of the wall, and then it would lift its hands up like that and go, I don't know. And then it would turn its head, and then it would look over and point to another area of the wall, and then it would go. So it was messing with her. Kind of like, what's there? I don't know. What's there? I don't know. She said at this point, she is in shock, but this terrified her. So immediately, as soon as she could move from the shock that she was in, she just lifted up the blanket and put it over her head. She's under the blanket for a little bit when she finally peeks over the blanket, and this thing is just gone. The next day, she wakes up and she's terrified, and she tells her grandmother about her experience. And her grandmother tells her that this was an angel. Her grandmother, later on that day, passes away. This was not an angel. So fast forward to a few years later, and the pandemic hits. And in Romania, she said that they have this tradition where after, a few years after someone passes away, they go to their grave. It sounds like they kind of celebrate the person, and they offer everyone a burial cake. When she goes to this thing, the whole thing is kind of reminding her of what happened that night. And that night absolutely terrified her, and she wanted to forget about it. She didn't want to think about it. So they go through this celebration, or this ceremony that they do, and she goes home. So she gets home, and she goes upstairs, and she goes to her room, and her family leaves. They go somewhere. So she's home alone in her house now. She's just hanging out in her room when suddenly she hears something that literally made her want to vomit. From downstairs, she hears, "Come eat, I made soup," in her grandmother's voice. She is sitting in her room like, there's no way I just heard that. So she has balls, because she gets up and she goes and opens her door, and she kind of walks out into the hallway a little bit, and then she hears her again say the same thing about the damn soup. She said she's yelling. She's not asking. She's demanding that she come eat this soup. So at this point, she is F this. So she goes back in her room and she shuts the door, and she waits for her family to get home, and she tries to forget about this because she did not know what to do about this. I mean, she was already traumatized about what had happened the prior years, and now this. So she thinks she's going insane at this point. She said in the email that she really thought she was losing her mind. A couple weeks pass, and she's trying to forget about this incident again, and she is in her room just hanging out when suddenly she hears bang, bang, bang on her door. Then she hears, "Bailey, Bailey, open the door," in her grandmother's voice. And bang, bang, bang. And then the same thing again. Whatever this thing is, demanding she opens the door. So she doesn't know what to do at this point, because she genuinely believes that she's hallucinating and that she's not really hearing these things. And so the banging eventually does stop, and she's just sitting in her room in complete shock. But she didn't really say what happened exactly after this. She kind of jumped forward to that summer when she was talking to a friend. Now, she hadn't really told anybody about this because, again, she did think that she was going crazy. So she tells her friend about about it. And she's like, I think I'm losing my mind. This is what's happening to me. I am terrified. I don't understand what's going on. And her friend is like, you're not losing your mind. Her friend then proceeds to tell her that a couple years prior, on New Year's Eve, when her friend was over at her house, her friend was sleeping on her couch, and that her friend woke up and saw a tall, dark figure that was so tall it was crouching, and that it was doing that same thing that it was doing with her. But Bailey says that from time to time she still hears footsteps in her house, and she hears her grandmother whistling. She said that she would like to think, and that she hopes that this is true, that this thing can't get in or do anything to her unless she lets it in or lets it do anything to her, and that it specifically cannot get into her room because her room is the only one with a Bible and a cross. So what did you guys think about that story? I've heard a lot of mimic stories, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think I've told any, and I don't think I've heard any that have to do with a mimic mimicking someone who has already passed on. That is so scary to me. I can't picture like hearing in my grandmother's voice, because both of my grandmothers have passed on, that anything. Just hearing that, especially come eat, I made you soup. You, like, that's taunting. It's like the thing that was kneeling down next to her was taunting her. Whatever this is taunting her. I don't think that was an angel. Do you guys think that was an angel? I do not think that was an angel. Do you guys think this was the same thing? Do you think the tall thing was the same thing mimicking? Because who knows? I mean, mimics are supposed to look like the person, right? Just not have their face. At least that's what I have learned from doing this and doing a little research. I could be wrong. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. But the fact that it was mimicking someone who had already passed on, a loved one that had already passed on, is so creepy to me. And I need to be careful about saying that like these stories don't scare me and that I'm desensitized to them, because the last time that I said that on a video, I had the worst sleep paralysis experience that I've had in a long time. And it was, you know, after you have an experience like a bad dream or a sleep paralysis and you wake up and like you can still feel it in the air, like it just feels bad and weird and you feel like you're still in it but you're awake. Has anyone else felt that? That's how it felt, and I hate that feeling. I'm running out of time, so any thoughts, opinions, suggestions that you have, please drop them below.
My haunted house. This is the reason why you should always do your research properly before renting a house. Story time. So I got a promotion, and the promotion was very good. It came with a good package and deal, but it meant that I had to move to a complete different city. I didn't know anyone in that city. I didn't have no friends, no family, no one, but I still went for it. I went there and I was living in Airbnb. It was starting to get really, really expensive. So I decided to start looking for a house. I asked my colleagues at work. They said that they can't recommend because it's very difficult to get a house in that city because things are really, really expensive. I searched online. I could not find anything. It was either too expensive, too big, or just something else. So one day after work, as I was driving back home, I decided to take a detour. I went through a complete different route. I never go through that route. I don't know what made me go through there. Anyway, as I was driving, I saw a notice on this house saying for rental. I was shocked to see that, and I thought maybe it was God sending me that way. Anyway, I reversed back. I stopped and I checked, and it was indeed for rental. I took the number. When I got home, I rang. A lady answered and she said, yes, the house is available and it's there as soon as possible. So I didn't want to lose that opportunity. I decided to arrange to meet her the next day after work, which I did. She told me the price. She told me some ground rules, which I should have actually paid attention when what she told me, but I didn't. I was just too eager wanting this house that I wasn't even paying attention to what she was telling me. Anyway, we signed a lease. I gave my first month rent and also I had to put down a down payment. She gave me the keys and we arranged a moving date. I moved in, everything was fine. But one thing I noticed, which was weird, is that there was a mirror in my bedroom, the bedroom that I was going to be sleeping in, but it had cloth covered over it. And I remembered the woman telling me never ever to remove that cloth off the mirror. So at first I thought, what's going to happen? I left it and I cleaned, I settled in. First week, everything is fine. I slept like a baby. I started to enjoy and like this house, and I thought it's a bargain. It's very cheap, location is good, not too far from my work, and also it's around amenities that I can go to. Remember, I'm not familiar with this city, so this house was the perfect house for me. Wrong. Anyway, third week, I decided to remove the cover of the mirror. Big mistake. I cleaned it. That mirror looked really nice. The design of it, beautiful. I thought, why would they be covering it? So I took the cover off, I cleaned it, and I went to bed. That night, I started to have really weird dreams. Dreams as if I was in a complete different world. Dreams as if I was
talking to people which had no faces. At first, I thought maybe work is getting too much on me. And it's true. We started getting busy at work. And I thought maybe it's the stress that is making me have these weird dreams. But then again, sometimes I would be waking up at night by the bed shaking very, very vigorously, as if there's people trying to move that bed out of that room. I thought this is not normal. I would pray before going to bed. Sometimes it'll calm down. Sometimes it gets even worse. One night, as I was sleeping, I woke up to go to the toilet and I could hear tapping on my wall. I checked everywhere in the house and I couldn't find where the tapping is coming from. Then I started hearing footsteps. Bearing in mind, I'm the only person who lives in that house. I do not share that house with anyone. The landlord has never ever been to the house. So now I'm wondering what on earth is going on here. Is it my mind that is playing tricks and games on me? Because I couldn't understand this. First it was the dreams. Now it's like the dreams are coming to reality. Anyway, I rushed back to bed. Then I was woken up by this scream, cries, which sounded like a woman. I sat up and I checked again. When I looked at the mirror, tell me why, I saw my reflection, but it did not move. The creepiest part of it is that my reflection had a big grin on the face. I closed my eyes and I checked again and it was the same. The weirdest thing is that I started hearing voices coming from that mirror. This freaked me out even more. I quickly covered the mirror. The next morning, the cloth was off from the mirror. This carried on for a few months. I rang the landlord and I told her. The first thing she asked me is, did you remove the cloth by any chance? I told her, well, it's just a mirror. And she said she warned me never ever to remove that mirror. Now she is in the house with me. I asked her, who is in the house with me? The line went dead.
I was the type of person who would always be scared to go in a pool as a kid because I'm like, what if there's a shark in there? Wait until you hear this story. There will be a new fear unlocked. Apparently this happened in Ixtapa, Mexico last summer. So this girl says that her and her boyfriend's family wanted to go on a little vacation. So they rented out this house in Ixtapa, Mexico that had a pool. When they got there, everything was nice, everything was relaxed, but it was at nighttime where all the lights went out. They all decided to go outside in the patio that was by the pool and they just sat there and started talking because it was complete darkness inside of the house. While they were all outside talking, that's when the topic of the paranormal came up and they all started sharing ghost stories. She explained how the ambiance was perfect for scary stories, and that's when somebody decided to tell them a scary story of something that happened in the house that they were staying at. The guy who was about to share the story was her boyfriend's cousin, and he would always visit the same house every year. He actually even got them a discount to stay there because of how many times he stayed there and the owner knew him. He told them about this terrible accident that took the life of a little boy in that pool. He explains that sometimes they can hear like somebody getting out of the pool and those wet steps on the cement when nobody was out there. Of course, everybody got scared. They got goosebumps, but they just took it as he was making this story up just to scare them, being that they were there at the moment. She did say though that the boyfriend's cousin did tell them the story with like all seriousness. Like he was not laughing, he wasn't saying it as a joke, so maybe it could be real, but just for their sake, it was made up. The lights came back, but then they went back off again, and it wasn't just their house, it was like the whole neighborhood. They could see that the lights were on and off and on and off. They just decided to ignore it altogether and just enjoy the time before they had to go inside and go to sleep. By this point, it was around 11, and the only people that were outside still was her boyfriend, and her boyfriend's brother. It was so hot out there that she just took advantage of the fact that the pool was there, and even though the lights were not on, she still wanted to get in. They had already started drinking wine, and by this point, they had already forgotten that story that the boyfriend's cousin had told them about the little boy drowning in the pool. So she gets in the pool and she's completely relaxed, enjoying the water, and that was until she felt something. So she was swimming deep underneath that pool because that's what she really enjoyed, and that is when she felt something bite her leg. She immediately reacts and kicks whatever bit her, but in that moment she also screamed, so she's swallowing the water. She explains how she thinks that she screamed loud enough to where like her boyfriend and the brother heard it because because the next thing you know, her boyfriend is underneath the water picking her back up. When they finally surface, the boyfriend's brother also grabs her and they take her out of the pool to know what happened, or like, why did she make so much noise underneath that water? She couldn't stop screaming and telling them that something bit her leg, like something bit her leg underneath the water. She had screamed so loud that the boyfriend's family, the aunt and the uncle, they all came out to see what was happening. She did have a bite mark on her leg, but it wasn't a bite like from an animal's mouth or anything like that. It was a perfectly lined up bite mark, almost as if a little kid had bitten her leg.
I just love a good paranormal activity story, and I've been getting a lot of them. And it's crazy because I just had told 2 recently that were chock full of activity. And this third story is no different. I mean, these stories are so crazy, you could make a movie out of them. So buckle up, because this next story comes from one of my followers. He says he'd like to be called Rue. He said that his whole life he's been a little bit sensitive to the paranormal, being able to see things, but nothing compares to what's going on now. So he says the home that he had lived in just before the one they are currently in was a fenced-in property with a gate. Living there was just him, his older sister, and their mother. It all started on a Friday when he was coming home from school. He came through the gate, came inside the house, and was passing the living room when he looked in and he saw his sister sitting on the couch playing with her phone. He greeted her and said hi, and she looked up with a smile and waved at him. He said it was a little bit odd because usually on a Friday she works late and she gets home in the evenings. And he said, come to think of it, he didn't even see her car in the driveway, but he was really tired, didn't want to put too much thought into it, so he shrugged it off and kept going. He says he makes his way through to his mother's room and they're hanging out and talking randomly, and he asked her, hey, what's for dinner? And she said she wasn't feeling very well, so she put a call out to the sister and asked her if she would bring some dinner home on her way home from work, and that she had recently called to tell them that she was going to be getting out pretty early, so she should be home soon. Could you go out and open the gate for her? He's really confused. He's like, wait a minute, if she's not home yet, who did I just interact with sitting in the living room? Okay. And he tells his mom this, and his mom just kind of goes, oh yeah, that's a mimic. I've been seeing her around the house lately too. You know, because that's totally normal. And sure enough, a few minutes later, his sister gets home. He's like, were you just here a few minutes ago? Are you playing tricks on me? And she's like, no, I literally just got home right now. And he said that it just kept getting worse from here. He said he'd hear singing in the hallway or his mother and sister talking to each other when they were not home. So eventually they got the heck out of there and they moved homes. He said for a while, things were pretty calm until very recently, things are starting to happen again. They were sure that if they moved, things would settle down, but they seem like they might even be worse this time. So much activity is going on. For example, he'll be in his room and he felt a tapping like on the back of his head. And then all of a sudden, all his electronics, his laptop, his phone, all drained down and shut off. And they were at like 80%. The mother claims that in her room, even during the day, she always feels a presence with her. She said that one time when she was laying down in bed, she felt something crawl in bed behind her. And she was facing her back to it, but she kind of reached behind her to just feel, and she felt a female in the bed, and she even touched her face and felt her hair. I don't know how she did it, but this woman just prayed it away and just laid there hoping to try to go back to sleep. I could freaking never. I would have flown out of the house. The next day, she even found long, brown, straight hair in the bed beside her, and it did not match anybody else in the family's hair. Like, are you freaking kidding me? Other times they would wake up and find the entire house a mess, like the couch pillows on the floor, cabinets open, dishes strewn all about. So they try to do a cleanse with sage, and it might calm down for a couple days, and then it just comes back full force, and it just continues. All 3 of them at different times have seen a figure of a woman. In Rue's case, he was walking through the hallway once and he saw her crouching down like she was crying, and he just booked it into his bedroom and closed the door. His mother saw her when she was home alone. She came out of her room and she heard the sound of a woman crying, and she couldn't figure out where it was coming from at first. And then she realized it was coming from the guest room. So she went on through, and sure enough, this woman was crying and crouching down again in the corner of the bedroom. And she just backed out, closed the door, and started praying. The sister saw her through the window walking around their backyard as they were all kind of home sitting together in the living room. And they just knew it was probably the same entity. Bruce says that he always feels a presence watching him while he sleeps, and he just knows if he opens his eyes, he's gonna see her. So just as they always do, they end up praying it away until they finally fall asleep. He did say that they found a way to kind of keep it at bay sometimes when they play the Quran on the TV all night through. It seems to settle it down. But if they forget to let it play the whole night through, they for sure see her, and things always happen. He really does feel like the mimic in the first house and then the entities in this one are two separate things. But then again, sometimes he hears his sister and his mother calling his name from in the house when they are not home. So he's like, I don't even know anymore. And these are the things that continuously go on in the home. He says it wouldn't be so bad if it was just like hearing them sometimes, but now that they're seeing the entities, it just brings it out on a whole new level. It just makes them anxious all of the time. I mean, obviously. What a freaking way to live. All right, guys. What are your thoughts? I know he is going to be up in the comments. Let him know what you think. Like, what is going on lately with these horrific haunted house stories? Oh my goodness. And hey, if you've got one of your own, I would love to hear it. And if you are new here, you gotta follow for more creepy story time.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity. You already know what it is. Here's my necklace. It's down there if you want. Now onto the story. My stalker demon, and not in the dark romance sense. You didn't have to mention that second part because that was quite literally the furthest thing from my mind. I've been following you for a while and I love your videos. I had some crazy experiences in my parents' old house and I figured it's about time to send you my story. My sister and I call this demon thing my stalker because it only targeted me in the house. When my dad and stepmom got together, we moved into a split-level fourplex in 2007. Almost immediately, my stepmom, younger stepsister, and I saw a little girl ghost walking around the house periodically. She radiated light and love, and we never had any issues with her. After a year, we started seeing her less and less, and I, in particular, started seeing something much darker. This shadow man would stand in the corner of my bedroom and stare at me almost every night. I couldn't see its eyes, but I could feel its eyes on me. And you just stay there and sleep in the same room as that? I shared a bedroom with my little sister, and it scared us so badly that we started sleeping with the closet light on. That's just not enough for me. That's just simply not enough. It didn't like that, and it stayed out of my room for a time if the light was on, but it found other ways to mess with me. When I'd walk out of my room at night to use the bathroom, I would either see it at the top of the stairs, my room was downstairs, or in the doorway of the laundry room, just watching me, waiting. It made going to the bathroom at night terrifying. At this point, the little girl we would all see stopped showing up, and my stepmom and I hypothesized that she was probably driven out by this darker entity. It took another year before it came more aggressive. One day, I got home from school before everyone else and started making mac and cheese. I put the pot on the stove's front left burner to boil the water while I quickly ran to the bathroom. I was gone maybe 2 minutes, and when I walked back into the kitchen, the pot was moved to a back burner and an oven mitt was on the burner that I turned on. It was starting to smoke, so I quickly put it in the sink. I got very lucky that I caught it before a fire started. Oh, so who's trying to take you out? I know it wasn't me because I always use the smaller front burner, so there's no way that I would have set the pot on the back burner. I had also seen the oven mitt beside the oven when I first turned on the front burner and put the pot on it. I purposefully moved it further away from the oven and closer to the sink before heading to the bathroom. The next incident was about a month later. I was sitting in the living room reading when my dad walked in and told me that he was heading to the gas station for cigarettes and would be right back. I hope he actually came back. Did he also get milk? The rest of my family was not home. Reminder, our house was split level, so when you entered the house, you could either walk upstairs or head down. From where I was, you had to walk upstairs and walk down this little hallway which had a bedroom and a bathroom before walking out into the open concept living room, dining room, and kitchen. The kitchen and dining room on the right, living room on the left. The couch I was sitting on was right at the end of the hallway against the wall to your left where the space opens up. So when my dad came out of the hallway into the living room, he was directly to my right. After my dad left, I heard the garage open and shut. I went back to reading, and out of my peripheral vision, I could see a head peeking around the corner at me. No, nobody, just the head peeking. You better get the fuck away from me. Now, at first I thought that it was my dad because sometimes he'd do that to scare us, so I ignored it. But after a minute, I said, I see you, Dad. You're not funny. All the while only watching this head from my peripheral. After saying that, I watched the head that I thought was my dad start to smile and smile, growing uncomfortably wide. I turned my head so quickly to look directly at it, and right before it disappeared, I got a very clear look. 2 feet to my right was this floating head. Fuck no. Floating fucking head, bitch? It's bad enough that you got a demon, but you got a floating fucking head? Fuck no. Very pale skin, bald, wide black eyes, and an unnervingly large smile with needle-sharp teeth. The image was so terrifying I still get chills thinking about it. I'm getting chills thinking about it right now. This is the last incident that happened before I made it my mission to get rid of this thing. You started far too late, friend. I was standing by the bathroom upstairs putting on makeup because we had a body mirror next to the bathroom. As I stood there holding my eyeliner in my hand, I heard something run up the steps behind me. I turned and there was nothing there. Thinking I was just imagining it, I turned back to the mirror and then I felt something rush me, slamming into me, causing my eyeliner to fly out of my hand. I kind of stood there in shock for a second until I felt this presence behind me, almost on top of me. Well, fuck, you said that it ran into you. I mean, like it was cloaking me with its presence. Keep in mind, it is midday and I have a light on directly above me because I needed good lighting to do my makeup. I mean, obviously. So I'm standing there half frozen, staring at my own reflection, seeing nothing behind me, but I could feel it on me. You would have to lock me in a mental facility. You would have to put me in a padded fucking room if I had this experience. It let out a slow breath against my neck before I finally froze, screamed, and ran down the stairs straight out of the house. I got the chills. I don't like it. Ugh. I sat outside until my stepmom came home 2 hours later. 2 hours would have turned into 24. 24 would have turned into 2 fucking years, bitch, because I will not step foot back in that fucking house. You got me fucked up. How I got rid of it. I contacted one of my native friends and asked her for help. She gave me sage, told me to remember to stay calm because my fear gave it strength. It would be fucking Thanos. It would be the Red Hulk, the red one, if it were based off of my fear. I would be royally fucked. And then she gave me a prayer to read. I walked around my house cleansing it twice. That night I didn't see it, but I did wake up the next day feeling very sick. I told my friend and she said to cleanse again because me being sick meant that it was fighting back. So I cleansed the house 3 more times throughout the day before I went to bed that night. I woke up the next day feeling 100% better. I never had another issue for the last year that I lived with my parents. Thank you so much for taking the time to read my story. I have very few people in my circle who believe me, so it's been nice finding the community that you built. Thanks. Love you and stay safe. Love you and stay safe. And keep cleansing so that hoe doesn't come back. TikTok is at Sarah, SARAKUSH 420. I see you. I don't like that. I don't like that not one bit. I don't like it at all. I literally had chills going down the back of my neck whenever I was reading that. I got the heebie-jeebies times 100. I'm a little bit nauseous, actually, because it freaked me out so bad. Because I pictured it. I think the floating head is what got me. Anyway, rated on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being really scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. That's a 10 for me. That's a 10 for me. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I will see you all at the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
Grab your snacks or grab your drinks because I have another Brujeria story time. The person who submitted this wants to be anonymous. So Jose and Mario were best friends from the time they were in diapers all the way to the point that they became adults. For whatever reason, Jose was always extremely jealous of Mario because Mario was extremely successful. Things just came easy for him. Growing up, he was always better at sports. He was always better in school. He was always better at everything. When they grew up into adults, Mario became this successful businessman that owned a ton of businesses and did really well for himself. Meanwhile, Jose always struggled just to make it financially. Regardless, they stayed best friends. Around this time, Mario was very into working out and he was really good at it. He was extremely fit. Jose wanted his help, so Mario agreed to train him. Once they started going to the gym together, Jose fell in love with one of the workers that worked there. Her name is Lucia. He fell absolutely head over heels in love with Lucia. He thought that she was literally the perfect woman, but Lucia wanted nothing to do with him. Instead, she was actually interested in Mario. Jose believed because Mario was the more successful one, he had more to offer financially, and he was more fit. This really angered Jose, and all of the resentment that had built up over the years against Mario for Mario being better than him completely came to his limit. Not long after, he decided to seek the help of this bruja. that lived in the neighborhood. I guess she was known for doing like spell casting or whatnot. He asked for her help and he said, what can I do to get Mario to stop being better at everything? How can I make it so I shine instead of him? The brew had told him that the only way he could do this is if he gives Mario, or if he makes a pact with and gives Mario's soul as collateral. She told him that in order to do this, he would have to grind up human bones and put it in a drink, anything that Mario would consume. He handed him a little bag filled with these ground up bones and told her to pretty much get to it. Jose wasn't sure how to get Mario to consume this because Mario was always extremely healthy. He didn't drink, he didn't like go out, like he didn't really do anything. Then he remembered that Mario was very much into the gym, so he put the ground up bones in Mario's pre-workout mix. So as weeks go by, Jose goes to the gym with Mario, continues to go to the gym with Mario, and witnesses as Mario takes the mixture, dumps it into his container, and mixes it into his workout or pre-workout mix. Months go by, and at this point, Jose is starting to become a little bit desperate because he doesn't really see anything happening to Mario. When one day they happen to be working out together at the gym, when they see this couple walk into the gym, but the couple looked odd. They were dressed in all black clothing. There was like a woman and a man. The woman had like something covering her face, like almost like one of those old school like funeral outfits that people used to wear back in the day. They walk into the gym. Mario and Jose are both staring at the couple, but it's almost as if no one else in the gym can see them because everybody else continues working out like normal. They walk right up to where they are and they say to Mario, "It's your time. It's time for you to come with us." Mario's confused and looks at Jose like, "What do you mean it's my time? How is it my time?" And Jose says that looking at Mario's face, he feels like there was a moment of like realization when he realized what was going on and who these people were and why no one else could see them. And he had like this look of almost like sadness and like betrayal in his face. And the moment the woman put her hand on Mario's shoulder, Mario literally dropped to the ground. Like his body drops to the ground and chaos erupts around the whole gym because people see him just drop to the ground. So everybody assumes that he probably had like a heart attack or he fainted, like they don't know what's going on. And the couple, the one dressed in all black, disappeared. Like the minute they touch Mario, they disappear. It's almost like they just disintegrate. The gym, of course, went ahead and called the ambulance, but Mario was gone. They ruled it out as him passing away from a heart attack due to the pre-workout, but there was never any real reason as to why a healthy 25-year-old man would just randomly drop on the ground. From that point forward, it was almost like Mario's luck or like his destiny switched, and Jose now started getting the good job opportunities, the financial gain. He ended up getting the woman, Lucinda, that he was in love with from the gym. She ended up paying attention to him instead, and it was almost like he ended up with the life that Mario would have had.
Let's read another scary story. This happened in July 2019, before the COVID pandemic started. Two of my friends and I really wanted to travel to the north of Portugal. We live in the capital of the country, Lisbon, and in the north there is a place called Garush, a natural park where people can camp. Instead of tents, we rented small bungalows because we don't really like sleeping in tents. Everything was going well. One of my friends, Sophia, is a very good driver and very down to earth when it comes to supernatural things. My other friend, Carla, loves this type of thing. She even dresses a bit like a witch and is fascinated by anything supernatural. We arrived in Garush by car and everything was beautiful. The smell of the forest in the morning, with the mist still slowly disappearing, was amazing. We went to the reception to get the key to our bungalow and walked to it. It was about a 10-minute walk from reception. There were 3 bungalows in that area. In one of them, there were people around our age, maybe about 25. They looked like a couple, and they also had a dog, a Portuguese water dog, which in the US is known as the dog that the Obamas had. In the other bungalow, there was an older couple, around 65 years old. They looked like a very sweet pair. We went to the supermarket to buy food, and when we came back, the area was full of sounds from birds and animals. It was beautiful. Night started to fall, but we felt safe because there were cameras outside the bungalows. My friend Sophia went to sleep because she was tired from the long drive. Carl and I stayed watching TV, and later we decided to go outside in front of the bungalow just to breathe the incredibly pure air. We did this for several days. We walked through the forest and enjoyed nature. On the 4th day, we did the same thing, but this time the 3 of us went outside together. It was around 10 p.m. when we suddenly heard a scream. It was the girl from the bungalow next door shouting to her boyfriend not to go because it might just be an animal.
When he opened the door, he looked at us and said, "Can you hear that scream too?" We said yes. He said he would go to reception in case someone needed help. My friend Carla, who loves night walks and mysterious things, said she would go with him. So the rest of us stayed near our bungalow with the girl and her dog, waiting outside. About 10 minutes later, the boyfriend came back and said the woman at reception told him it might be an animal, but there was a flashlight somewhere along the path. He said he was going to check it out, and we all decided to go together. I thought it was strange that Carla had stayed at reception because she normally loves this kind of thing. We walked for about 5 minutes until we reached a flashlight lying on the ground, turned on. When I looked at my friend Sophia's face, that's when I felt it. There were no sounds, no birds, no insects, nothing. Only the wind. I had a bad feeling and said we should go back, but the boyfriend kept insisting we go help whoever might be out there. When I got angry and said we were going back, he suddenly started laughing at us. That's when I noticed something disturbing. He had one single tooth in the front that was very yellow. The rest of his teeth were white. At that moment, the girl's dog started barking aggressively at him. He turned to us and said that going back wouldn't matter because he would always know where we were. Every hair on my body stood up. I knew something about this wasn't normal. I screamed at the girls to run. We all ran back to the bungalow. I didn't look back, but I felt like he was behind me. When we got close to the bungalow lights, I started shouting for him not to come any closer. He just stood near the forest, laughing. Suddenly, we saw 2 flashlights coming down the road. It was Carla and the girl's real boyfriend returning from reception, asking what was happening. I immediately shouted for them to come inside the bungalow. When I looked again, the thing was not there anymore, and we told them everything. Right away, Carla said, "You found a mimic." I'd never even heard that word in my life. None of us slept that night. We all stayed together in our bungalow. At 6 in the morning, since I hadn't slept at all, we went to reception and asked them to call the police. Later, the police showed us the security footage from the cameras. They said there was nobody there. But in the video, you could see me screaming at nothing and pointing to someone in front of the bungalow like I was a crazy person. After that, we decided to leave, and the couple, who had now become our friends, also decided to leave. While we were packing our things into the car, the police said they still wanted to talk to us later. We exchanged contact information with the couple. As we were leaving, the elderly couple from the 3rd bungalow came outside. They asked if we were leaving, and I said yes and asked if they had heard us screaming during the night. The woman said no, that they sleep very heavily. When I said goodbye to her, she smiled at me. And again, every hair on my body stood up, because she had the exact same smile and the same yellow tooth. I immediately turned away and told my friends in the car. They said that when we got home, we should call the detective. 2 weeks later, the detective called me. He told me that the 3rd bungalow had never been used for guests. It was only used to store construction materials, so it was impossible for an elderly couple to have stayed there. To this day, the police never gave us the video footage we asked for so many times, the footage where we hoped to see the elderly couple. And I still live today without knowing what really happened. Thank you for reading my story. Thank you so much for submitting this story. This is so creepy, and I love how your friend Carla was like, "Yep, that's a mimic." Because I think that if anything, the elderly woman in the 3rd bungalow was most certainly some sort of like witch or mimic who is able to shapeshift. And it's so crazy that she had the exact same smile as well. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can. And I will see you in the next one.
In Namibia, there's a spirit called, sorry if I butcher this, but Grandma Biltong. She either gives you power or turns you into meat. Well, the person who submitted the story says that her and her cousin called her. Unfortunately, only one of them came back. I'm gonna call the person who submitted the story Selma. So Selma says that in Namibia, there's a legend about a woman who turns people into biltong, which is a type of dried meat. In her language, they call her, I'm sorry if I butcher this, Uma Ha, which translates to Grandma Biltong in Damara. So Selma and her cousin knew the myth, but one night they decided to put it to the test. So the girls locked themselves inside the house, called out to her by repeating her name while offering her biltong. According to legends, there are only 2 possible outcomes. She can reward you with spiritual powers, or reject your offering and turn you into biltong herself. So as soon as the girls finished the ritual, Selma's cousin, we're gonna call her Bo, she said she felt this cold chill like crawl up her spine. And at the same time, this is when Selma started seeing shadows moving across the walls. They went completely silent, trying to figure out what was going on. When suddenly, Selma felt something slam into her head, and she blacks out. And in her dream, she saw a woman with a wicked smile. The woman stared at Selma and said, "You dare offer such a dirty offering to me?" And Selma asks, "Who are you?" Her expression darkened, and she responds with, "How dare you question a being older than you?" And that's when Selma knew it was her. The lady began chanting in a language that she recognized as Damara. Suddenly, multiple arms appeared to pin her down. She could not move, she could not scream, when suddenly the lady started skinning her alive. I don't even know if I could say that on here. And in the dream, the lady ate her heart. So Selma woke up gasping for air. But she looks around and her cousin is gone. For 3 days, they searched everywhere for Bo. No one had seen her. No one knew where she went. Then Selma had another dream. While in that dream, she saw her cousin standing beside a lady also known as Umaha. Her cousin Bo looked terrified. Her cousin said to her, "She took me." Selma jolted awake, and on her nightstand was a plate of biltong, something she knew for a fact she had not put there on her nightstand. And next to the dried meat was a note that read, "I'll accept this offering." And then Selma said after that her life started going incredibly well. She passed school and earned a PhD in accounting and economics, and eventually became one of the top accountants in the country. But even now though, she still has dreams about her cousin. And in those dreams, her cousin is crying, begging for her to help her escape whatever nightmare that she seems to be trapped in. So it appears that they have their own devil in Namibia. That poor cousin. Anyway, if you have a spooky story that you want me to tell, feel free to submit it to me right here on TikTok or on Instagram. And I did drop a brand new video on YT. You guys better make sure you go over there, subscribe, and check it out. Duh. That's at the end of all of my videos. I love you, my other humans, from your favorite Asian homegirl.
Stories about animals acting like humans. So this guy says that when he was little, he lived in a ranch in Veracruz with his parents. They had several horses, and one particular night his dad had sent them to go feed the horses. As he was getting closer and closer to where the horses were, he said that he heard two people having a conversation. He heard when one of the voices says, "I don't know, that's just how things are," and another voice responding saying, "Be quiet, somebody's getting closer, they're gonna hear us talking." He obviously tried to go to where he heard the voices, and the only things in there were the horses. He even started looking underneath to see if maybe there was somebody hiding in there, but of course there was nobody in there. He ends up feeding the horses, and as he's walking away, he says that he hears when somebody says, "They gave us the same food as always," and then a bunch of laughter. Not the horses roasting. What the fuck you gave them to eat? Time to switch it up. They're literally telling you they want something new. He actually says that when they started laughing, it was almost like they were trying to laugh like very low, not like out there. But that's when he knew that it was definitely the horses talking to each other. So this story is coming from a metro driver in Mexico. He says that there was a guy that got on the bus, and the guy ends up saying, "Hey sir, if I tell you something, will you not make me get off the bus? I promise I'm not on drugs." The metro driver was a little curious, so he's like, "Okay, tell me what you need to say." This man ends up telling the metro driver he was watering his land when he finds a random cat. And he ends up talking to the cat like, "Hey kitty, what are you doing here?" To his surprise, he says that the cat responded, "Nothing, I just want to get some rest." The guy ends up saying, "Well, don't you have a home that you can go and rest to?" The cat tells him, "Yes, I have a house, but they never let me sleep. Can I just sleep the night here with you?" The guy ends up telling the cat like, "Yeah, sure," but he goes inside of his house, locks himself in the restroom, and then he started crying of how scared he was. That's when he left his house, got on the bus, and had to tell somebody what the fuck just happened. Honestly, I would be a little scared too. Like, yeah, I don't want to be alone with the talking cat, but also I'd be so curious, like, what else do you know? What other animals can talk? Like, I would try to get all the information out of this cat. God, I already thought all the things I can do with that cat. Like, I would make it go spy on people for me. This is why they don't talk to us. If I'm already thinking of how I can use this talking cat, shame on me. Shame on me. Now here's the kicker though. After the man gets off the metro driver swears that the bus is empty, but he sees a shadow in the back of a cat. A cat shadow. The cat's probably like, "This motherfucker, like I just finished talking to him and now he tells somebody about me." But honestly, what would you do if your cat talked to you?
His thumbs flew across the keyboard of his phone. "Already miss you. Her. You've only just left. Yeah, and it hurts. You're my oxygen. Her. You're exhausting. I had such a great weekend, baby. Who knew guns could be so much fun? I want to go clay pigeon shooting every weekend now. Are you sure it wasn't the company you were keeping that made it so much fun? Her. Debatable. Send me a picture just to keep me going until tomorrow, please, Larissa. Her. You go first." He smiled despite himself. He was standing in the hallway of his apartment, jacket still on, phone in one hand, keys in the other. The place felt quieter than usual, like the silence had thickened after he'd gone. He texted again. "Right now?" Her. "Right now." He opened the camera and lifted the phone. The front-facing image showed his face, slightly flushed, smiling, Over his shoulder, the bedroom door was open just a crack. The room beyond was unlit. He adjusted the angle. Click. The photo appeared, and his smile faded. Something was wrong. It took his brain a second to catch up, to notice the detail it refused to process at first. From the thin, black wedge of the doorway, something pale reflected the flash. Eyes. They weren't wide or glowing or monstrous, just watching. Human. That was what made them so scary. Half hidden, as if whoever or whatever they belonged to knew exactly how much of itself to reveal. His mouth went dry. He whirled around. The bedroom was empty. The door hadn't moved, it hadn't opened. The darkness inside lay flat and normal. He looked at the photo again. The eyes seemed clearer now, familiar in a way that made his skin prickle. He zoomed in, pulse hammering. He could make out the curve of a cheekbone, a suggestion of hair pulled back from a face pressed close to the frame. His phone buzzed. Her. Did you send it yet? He swallowed. Hold on, Larissa, something weird's happening. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Her. You okay? He stared at the photo, heart racing, something about the eyes, the shape, the way they looked at him. Another vibration. Her. Why are you taking so long? Send me the picture. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then the realization hit him at once, sharp enough to steal his breath. They weren't just familiar, those eyes. They were hers.
Oh!
He laughed. Oh my God, you scared me, stupid! How did you manage to get here so quickly, Larissa? Even quicker than me. He pushed the bedroom door open, expecting to see her, expecting her to jump out at him. He'd squeal like a baby and then they'd laugh, but there was no one there. His phone buzzed. Her. Babe, where's my selfie? He looked back on the photo he'd taken and there was nothing there. No eyes, no marks on the camera, nothing. He shook his head. You must be exhausted, old buddy, he said to himself. He lifted the phone anyway to take another selfie to send her. Click. He looked at the photo and his hand started to shake. A face. Not just eyes, it was a face, half peering from behind the door, and it looked just like hers. His phone buzzed again. Her. You keep calling me Larissa. Did he? Her. You've been doing it all weekend. Him. I didn't mean to. You and your sister just look so much alike. God, does she know? Does she know about him and Larissa? He texted again. Baby? From behind him, he heard the door slowly creak open and the slight buzz of her phone, almost as though she was in the house. He heard a noise behind him, a familiar one. Click, click. He'd heard it all weekend. A gun being cocked. His phone buzzed again. Her. Run.
There was this French ecologist named Philippe Garnier. Now, he went down to the Congo, Africa, on this research expedition, and he said he was going down the Congo River to this area where a lot of people have not been before. And he said one of these fishing villages that he came upon, he was going to stay there for like a couple weeks. And he said there were missionaries there who like helped out this tribe and helped him communicate with them. Well, one of the things that he first notices when he gets to this area is that there are all these crosses right next to the river. And so he asked one of the missionaries, like, what is the meaning of these crosses by the river? And he says, well, you see, this tribe here, they believe in what they call the Namibia. And he said the Namibia are like these they call river water people who are similar to, in other cultures, like mermaids. And he said they believe that they live in the deep parts of the river. And he said, you know, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, they will appear as what you desire to lure you into the water and take you. And he said these people believe that several of the villagers were taken by them and they are very afraid of them. So he says, you know, it just sounded like a crazy fabricated story or whatever. So he said at this time, after he got done talking to the missionary said, hey, I want to give you this cross, you know, and stuff. And so he takes the cross, he puts it on. And he said, you know, after a couple of days spending time with this tribe, he realized that they were really terrified of these like water river people. And he said one night he went to bed in this hut next to the river and he remembered it was storming really, really bad. And he said it just kind of kept him up. He couldn't sleep. And then when he finally got to bed, he said he started to have this dream. And he said in this dream, this beautiful woman appeared in his room. And he said she was completely naked. She had this blank stare on her face. And he said she was just moving her shoulders like kind of back and forth. And he said she walked over to the side of where he was sleeping and she started to rub his face. And then he said after that, they became intimate. And he said during this time, he started to notice she was changing. And all of a sudden, this beautiful woman turns into this decrepit corpse. And he said, she had these long, dangly fingers with black nails, sharp black teeth. She had eyes that were like hanging out of the sockets. And he said, it was just the most terrifying thing he had seen. And he said, like when you thought of a mermaid, you thought that it had like this single tail. But he said this woman had both legs, but they looked very aquatic like. And he said the next thing he remembers is one of the villagers is yelling at him. And he realizes he's not in the hut. He's actually outside next to the river, getting ready to step into the water. And he said right at that moment, there was a flash of lightning and it illuminated the entire river. And he sees the shadow of what appears like something in the water, and it jumps down and splashes. And he said, it was just this really terrifying experience. And he said throughout his times being there, he said at night you could hear whatever these were screaming. And he said it was just probably the most scariest thing you could imagine. And the fear in these villagers' eyes, like, he could tell whatever this was something real.
Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you'd like to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. When I was growing up, I had a best friend I'd known basically my entire life. Our moms were best friends, so we were constantly having sleepovers and play dates. I practically lived at her house. When we were around 8 or 9 years old, something happened during one of those sleepovers that neither of us had ever been able to explain. Around that time, my friend's mom actually owned a nursing home. Because of that, my friend and her little sister, who was about 2 years old, would often go there with her while she worked. Sometimes they would help with small things like activities with the residents or light cleaning. The residents absolutely adored her little sister. The sweet little old ladies were obsessed with her. That summer, I had started helping out there too, just doing small chores. For the most part, it was nice, but there was one room in the entire building that my friend and I absolutely hated going into. One of the residents had a collection of dolls. I'm not talking a few dolls. There were well over 30 of them. Old, vintage dolls. Porcelain faces, glass eyes, frilly dresses that looked decades old. They were sitting on shelves, on dressers, on chairs, everywhere you looked. Whenever we had to go in there to change the sheets or dust the furniture, the room felt wrong. You know the feeling when you can sense someone watching you. That's exactly what it felt like. No matter where you stood in that room, it felt like those dolls were staring directly at you. The feeling was so intense, it would make the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. My friend and I would rush through cleaning that room as fast as we possibly could, just so we could get out. Eventually, winter rolled around, and my friend's family had moved into a beautiful new house. It was gorgeous, but it also had this strange feeling, like you were never really there alone. I had a few creepy experiences in that house over the years, but one night stands out more than anything else. During sleepovers, my friend and I usually hung out in their playroom. It was at the end of a hallway right next to the bathroom. The room had a long baby gate dividing it in half. One side was the play area, and the other side was set up as an office space. Her little sister's toys were usually scattered everywhere in there. But on this particular night, when we walked into the room, almost everything had been cleaned up and put away inside the big walk-in closet. Everything except one thing. A doll. The moment I saw it, my stomach dropped. I instantly felt that same horrible feeling I used to get in that nursing home room filled with dolls. My friend must have noticed the look on my face because before I could even ask about it, she said, "Oh, that's my sister's creepy doll. She got it from one of the ladies at the nursing home. The lady passed away, and immediately I knew exactly which room that doll had come from." My friend picked it up with this disgusted look on her face and tossed it over the baby gate into the office area. We both kind of laughed it off and tried not to think about it. The rest of that night was normal. We played on her Wii, messed around on the computer with her silly camera, and just hung out like we always did. Around midnight, we decided to go to her bedroom. We stayed up talking and joking until around almost 3 in the morning. And that's when things got weird. As we were sitting on her bed talking, we suddenly heard a loud bang come from her parents' bathroom. Right after that, there was this awful screeching sound. We both froze instantly. We didn't say a word. We just sat there listening, waiting for it to stop. When the screeching finally faded away, the house went completely quiet. The only sound was the winter wind outside howling softly through the trees behind the house. My friend started to say something about the noise, but she got cut off because suddenly we heard knocking. 3 loud knocks somewhere in the hallway. Then silence. Then 3 more knocks over and over again. And mixed in with the knocking, we could hear footsteps. Slow footsteps, moving back and forth down the hallway. The floorboards creaked like someone was pacing outside of her bedroom door. At this point, we were absolutely terrified. We were just sitting on the bed staring at each other, too scared to move. It felt like it went on forever, and then suddenly, everything stopped. Complete silence. Even though the noises had stopped, we were both too scared to move. It felt like if we made even the smallest sound, whatever had been outside that door would start again. Eventually, we decided the best thing to do was to just try and go to sleep. But I remember lying there for a long time staring at her bedroom door, half expecting it to slowly creak open, waiting for something to walk inside. Eventually, though, I must have fallen asleep. A few hours later, early in the morning, I woke up. My mom was usually there to pick me up pretty early after sleepovers, so I got up to start getting ready. Still half asleep, I walked down the hallway toward the bathroom. As I passed the playroom, I noticed something sitting in the doorway. At first, my vision was still blurry from just waking up, so I couldn't tell what it was. But as I got closer, I felt my stomach drop. Sitting upright in the doorway of the playroom was that doll. The same doll we had thrown over the baby gate the night before. It was sitting perfectly upright, facing straight down the hallway toward the bedrooms. And the thing is, that doll shouldn't have been able to sit up like that. Most of its body was made of fabric, so it was always slumped over. There was no way it could sit upright on its own. There was also no way anyone could have moved it. Her little sister was too small to climb over the baby gate. Her parents were still asleep. My friend and I were the last people in the playroom that night. I just stood there staring at it, feeling the color drain out of my face. Then I turned and ran into the bathroom to get ready as fast as I could. I kept telling myself that in a few minutes my mom would be there and I'd be far away from that house. It's been over a decade since that night, but I still believe something was attached to that doll, and whatever it was, I don't think it liked being thrown that way.
Get ready with me while I tell you this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any scary stories, ghost stories, or paranormal encounters that you'd like to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. I've always felt like I was a little more sensitive than most people when it comes to spirits. Ever since I was a kid, I could walk into a room and instantly feel when something wasn't right, like an invisible pressure in the air. I had this exact same thing, and I've had it since I was a kid. It drives me nuts sometimes. When I was around 14 years old, I had an experience that still gives me chills to think about. I lived in a second-floor apartment at the time, and one night my best friend was sleeping over. It was late, probably around 11 p.m., and we were sitting outside on the small patio that overlooked a narrow trail running between the buildings. The path led to a dog park and some other apartments further down. Everything was quiet, but it felt like too quiet. And then suddenly, I felt it. That unmistakable feeling that someone or something was watching me. The kind of feeling that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up before your brain even understands why. My eyes immediately darted down towards the trail below the patio, and that's when I saw him. No. Any sort of paranormal or ghost activity aside, feeling like somebody is watching you, especially at night, okay? You're supposed to be in like the comfort, like you're in your own space, right? Feeling like somebody's watching you when you're supposed to be in the comfort of your own space, and then looking over and see, yes, in fact, somebody is actually watching me, that's fear. An Amazon delivery driver was slowly walking along the path, but something about him felt off. He wasn't carrying a package, which didn't make any sense because his truck was parked near the entrance to the complex. If he had a delivery, he should have been walking towards someone's door. Instead, he was just slowly passing by. He never looked up at us after I noticed him. He never spoke. He just kept walking. Eventually, he disappeared down the trail, but the feeling he left didn't leave. If anything, it got worse. I turned to my friend and asked quietly, "Do you feel like someone's watching us?" She looked around, confused, and shook her head, so I asked her to stand in front of me for a second while I looked around the courtyard. The moment she stepped forward, her expression changed instantly. Her face went pale. She slowly turned back towards me and whispered, "Okay, now I feel it too." That confirmation when somebody confirms what you've been feeling, that's the worst. You can't just convince yourself anymore, like, oh, it's just me. I'm just feeling something off. No, girl, I feel it too. Suddenly, the air felt heavy, thick, like the entire patio had become suffocating. We looked at each other, the trail, the trees, the dog park, but no one was there. But we both knew and felt that something was wrong. Without even talking about it, we grabbed everything we had outside and rushed back into the apartment. And the second we stepped inside, the energy shifted. It wasn't just the feeling of being watched anymore. It felt darker, heavier, like something had followed us inside. We hurried into my bedroom, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. But the moment we stepped into the room, both of us froze. Our heads started pounding instantly. It was like a pressure building behind our eyes. And at the exact same time, without even planning it, we both said the same thing. "It's under the bed." No, absolutely not. The words left our mouths simultaneously. My friend had always been sensitive to spirits too, and a few weeks earlier, she had even believed she had a demonic attachment. What? And at that moment, we both felt absolutely certain something was beneath the bed. I am getting chills. There was one thing under the bed that had suddenly come to mind. A book. Hidden beneath my mattress was a beginner book about witchcraft. Inside it were a few items I had been experimenting with. Neither of us moved, neither of us looked. Instead, we immediately dropped to our knees and started praying out loud. We turned on worship music and let it play as loudly as we could, and the second we started praying, the pressure vanished. The pounding in our heads stopped. The suffocating feeling in the room lifted like something had just left. We never looked under the bed that night, but neither of us ever forgot the moment we both knew without saying a word, something was down there watching us.
Guess what? We are back with another Trini Paranormal, Trini Scary Story, Trini Folklore for you today. And it's Friday the 13th, so it's Black Friday. So I bring an extra scary story for you. And to top it off, I don't know what the creature is. Some countries just call it a Yeti, some countries just call it Bigfoot, some countries just call it a Sasquatch. But what we call it in Trinidad is it's an unclassified, paranormal, supernatural, folkloric creature. Let me get into the story. So the story is, this is around Diwali time. Every year for Diwali, we go to pick bamboo in Kora to burst. One day, around 7 of us decided to go behind Wasa, which is located in Kora Road, to cut bamboo. I was about 15 years old. All of us were around the same age. We usually walk to Kora to cut our bamboos. It was about lunchtime and we decided to leave to go. So while we were walking, we were getting a bad feeling. However, we just ignored it and decided to go because we were excited to get our bamboos to burst. It was something we looked forward to every Diwali. So we reached on Wasa compound and they let us through. We had to walk through the river and search for a good bamboo patch. While walking, we felt like someone was watching us. So we decided to take a little swim in the waters to cool our minds. After about 30 minutes, we decided to walk further to look for bamboo. We were in the water walking, right? We then came up to a bend on the river. As we were approaching the bend, we
we saw a big figure standing on the rock. All of us just froze. It was about 8 feet or 9 feet tall, covered in black hair. We couldn't see its face. It then jumped from the rock to the other side of the river and started running in the opposite direction. We all watched each other, dropped everything we had holding, cutlass, water bottles, etc., and then ran out of there as fast as we can. It had some bushes we passed through, and while we were running, we heard other movements. We finally reached the Wassa station and told the workers there what happened. They said that they've always witnessing strange things there, and other people have seen a lot of paranormal activities. They also said that people practice bad in that part of the river. The creature could have passed for Bigfoot because it was big and strong and it was covered in black hair. Listen, I would think it was Papa Boa because he's like the Bigfoot of Trinidad, but he's half human or generally seen as half human, half animal. This entire creature looked like a Bigfoot. And it has been told, like legend has it, that, Bigfoot and Sasquatch and Yetis, they are all like interrelated species that are found around the world. Who's to say that the Caribbean and Trinidad, that is full of scary, spooky things, does not have something similar to a Bigfoot, Yeti, or Sasquatch, or Papaboa in the forest? Let me know, especially to those who tend to be in the bush, hunting, hiking, living in the forested areas. Have you ever seen something that looked like a Bigfoot?
I'm back with another spooky scary story time, so grab your snacks, get your blankets, turn the lights off, and listen. I'm just gonna start off by saying I don't necessarily see things anymore. Like, I might see things like in the peripheral of my eyes, but I don't literally see things the way I used to. I don't know how old I was, but I know that like towards the beginning of my life, especially when I lived in my grandmother's old apartment, go back and forth from like where we live now and New York City, I always would like see things, specifically people. And this one person that I remember seeing was like this man. He was like always in army clothes. I don't know if I ever asked my mom about a family member that was in the army or anything like that, but I always would see this man like everywhere I went, like. But I really really remember seeing him in like the living room of my grandma's apartment at the time. So it was this one night that I was in my baby little bed thing, and I was crying myself to sleep. Like, I was aware that I was a baby and I was crying myself to sleep. I didn't know why I was crying because I had my baby bottle. I didn't feel like I needed to be changed or anything like that. But maybe because it was dark. It was me and my mom and I think my youngest brother. Excuse me, not my youngest brother. My first little brother. We were all laying in the living room. Me and him were on like two separate beds, and my mom was laying on the couch. And like I said, it was pitch black. No TV was on. All you could hear was the AC and like the bubbles that the little fish in my grandparents' apartment would make the sounds from the fish tank. I remember me wanting to be held by like my mom, and she was asleep obviously, but I was crying. And I just remember feeling this presence stand at the side of my little baby bed. When I looked, like I said, it was dark, but I could see like the army fatigue clothes that like army people wear. He was just standing there looking at me. But when he would look at me, I wouldn't get scared or anything like that. Like, it didn't look like he had bad intentions, but he also didn't look happy. He just had like a blank face. It took me a very long time to stop seeing this man, but I never had like a bad encounter with him. I would just always see him standing there, like basically watching me and my surroundings, and he always had a blank face. I don't think I ever told my mom as a kid about that person, but I know she probably once or twice seen me looking in an area where there was nobody at, or talking to somebody that, was not really there. But if you guys love spooky, scary stories and just any story times in general, you should definitely follow me because I have lots on my page.
In honor of Women's History Month, I'm doing 31 Days of Women in Horror. Today, we're talking about one of the most iconic women in sci-fi horror history. In 1979, Sigourney Weaver introduced one of the most powerful heroines ever created in sci-fi horror history, Ellen Ripley in Alien. In a time where most horror films centered men around being heroes, Ripley proved that women could be the one fighting the monsters and surviving. In 1986, she returned to Aliens, cementing the character as one of the greatest final girls in horror history. She continued her role in 1992's Alien 3, and again in 1997's Alien Resurrection, where Ripley returned in a chilling twist as a clone. But Sigourney Weaver didn't just dominate sci-fi horror. In 1984, she played Dana Barrett in Ghostbusters, a character who becomes possessed by a supernatural entity. And in 1989, she returned in Ghostbusters 2, and also made a cameo in 2016's Ghostbusters reboot, then appeared again in Ghostbusters 2021 Afterlife. Her horror work also includes Snow White, A Tale of Terror in 1997, playing Claudia Hoffman. She also played Alice in 2004's The Village. Then the court horror film The Cabin in the Woods in 2012, she played the director. She also played in Red Lights and Vamps in 2012. Her most recent film, The Gorge, released in 2025, she plays Bartholomew, proving that Sigourney Weaver is still a powerful presence, decades after she first terrified audiences. Sigourney Weaver didn't just star in horror. She redefined what a female hero in horror could do. Come back tomorrow for my 31 Days of Women in Horror for Women's History Month.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me tell you guys a story of when my cousin, who was a devil worshiper or a Satanist, not by choice by the way, decided to kill himself because whatever thing that he was serving, whatever that he was doing, whoever his leaders were, wanted him to kill me. Now, I need y'all to understand that this person was not necessarily my cousin again. It was one of those people that I grew up with because his mom and my mom were friends. Do you understand? So me and him were very close. At this time, we are both 15, by the way. And so I decided to go and sleep over at his place because the following day was his birthday party and I lived far, so we were not going to be able to make it in time. So, I decided to go sleep over at his place. And I'm thinking, girl, it's about to be late, right? So from the time that we were young till we were at that age, we used to sleep in the same bed, y'all. It was not creepy. It was not weird for the both of us because we were used to it, right? And I saw him as my brother. He saw me as his sister. So, okay, sharp, we'll get to his place, we're vibing, we're having fun. But, this person, I had last saw him 2 or 3 years back, and he was not what he was. He was kind of weird. He had a pendant necklace, he had upside down crosses. So he had this hand that had, it was a cute little hand that was like this, and that's where he put all his necklaces. And, the necklace, the hand thingy, it was a decoration thing. I hope you understand. And so he put his necklaces over there, and it was filled with red food coloring. I don't even know if that was actually food coloring, but he was kind of dark, he was different. He was not the person that I knew that was always so happy, because every time I'd pull through, he'd ask me what's happening with my life, and I'd ask him what's happening with his life, and he would tell me about the girls in his life, school life, he was very dark. We're sitting and this person is quiet, he's wearing dark clothes, and I'm talking to his mom, he's not talking with us, he's not laughing. I'm thinking, I wanted to ask the girl, his mom, and be like, hey, what's up with bro over here, So fast forward now, it's nighttime. Me, his mom, his little brother are watching a movie. And I think we're watching Avatar because Avatar movies take longer than other movies. I think it's 3 hours or something. So we're watching Avatar, whatever. And, time is moving. We're eating snacks. And he comes to me at 11 p.m., right? Mind you, that entire time that I was there, he did not speak to me. He only spoke to me once when he greeted me and told me where to put my bag, and that was it. After that, he just sat in the room quiet, and I tried to speak to him, and he just he was just giving me meh answers, and I let it go, wabo. So he comes into the sitting room, we were watching the movie, and he's like, hey, listen, in my bedroom, I have rules. At 11:30 sharp, you have to be asleep, otherwise you're not sleeping with me. And I'm like, guys, this was my brother, bruh. So I'm like, why? He's like, no, like that's the rules. Like you have to be asleep at like 11:30. And I'm like, okay. I get up. Okay, I go to the room. I'm thinking we're gonna talk. A baby boy drags the blanket covers over him, and that was it. I'm busy with my phone, and he tells me, listen, he's facing the other way. My phone the brightness is so low, like, and I also have like my phone, like my face like this, so you can't really see that it's on. But it was like, that phone that you have on, like, please switch it off and go to sleep for real. I switch off my phone because I was kind of scared of him. Switch off my phone, go to sleep, baba. Sharp. I wake up, guys, at 2 a.m. and I hear drums playing outside, and I'm like, hey, what's happening in this house, right? So I look over at him, and I'm like, but like, listen, the drums, you could feel like the drums felt like they were playing outside of the window, like somebody was playing drums outside of the window. So I kind of tried to wake him up, like, boy, like, can you hear those drums that are playing? Like, what's going on? Like, do you guys have a ritual or something? What's happening? I'm kind of scared, and these people are humming as well, like, do you get it? I tried to wake him up. He refused to wake up. I get up and I run to his mom's room. I get there, tell his mom, like, can you hear these drums that are playing? And she's like, no, she can't hear any drums. Mind you, in every angle of this house, in every side of this house, I hear drums. Even in his mom's room, like outside of her room, I hear these drums. And I'm like, yo, can you hear these drums? She's like, no. And I'm like, there are drums playing outside, and I'm scared. I was 15, y'all. His mom knew that I did not do drugs, okay? So she was like, what's going on? Like, are you okay? I'm like, I don't know, bro. Like, I'm really scared, you know? So she goes into our room, and she's like, where do you hear the drums? I'm like, they're outside. I peek outside the window. There is no drums. There's no people, nothing. But I tell her, like, I hear drums. So we try to wake up baby boy, and he keeps on telling us he's not waking up, like, we should leave him alone. But he's saying it in his sleep. Like, you can tell that this person is in really deep sleep. Okay, so the mom is like, okay, let's pray. But she starts to pray. We start praying. As we're praying, guys, the light bulb falls to the ground and breaks. And that's when I think his mom took me seriously, that I really am hearing things. But because she couldn't hear it, she probably thought I was spiritually inclined or something. She kind of looks at me, and I look at her like, I told you there was something that is going on. I can't really explain it because you can't see it and I can't see it, but I can hear it. The light bulb falls, guys, and she's like, you know what, just come sleep in my room. And I'm like, what about big dog over here? She's like, he'll be fine, you know, because we tried to wake him up and he refused to wake up. Shabu, he goes, I go sleep in the same room with his mom and his little brother. The little brother had his own room as well. But apparently the little brother, whenever he slept alone, like, he would wake up and he would start screaming and say there are people that are trying to take him. So he eventually just started sleeping with his mom. And I wish they had told me, okay, but even if they had told me before I came, I would have still came because I would not have believed them. So I get to sleep. We wake up in the morning and the light bulb is on the floor. His mom woke up first and then she like swept it. Then I asked him, like, didn't you hear the drums that were playing outside? And he kind of looked at me scared, like, what? And I was like, you didn't hear the drums that were playing outside? You refused to wake up. That's when he started talking to me like, no, you didn't hear any drums. You probably were hallucinating. Maybe you were too tired or something. And I was like, too tired how, bro? I'm telling you. And I tell him how me and his mom came back and we prayed. And he was just looking at me like, you know, and I'm thinking, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you acting all shocked? Like, are you used to hearing them? Like, do they scare you? And it's just like, nah, like, I don't know. And then, you know, we let that conversation slide. That same day, it's his birthday, guys, and we're going to celebrate it at this other restaurant. And they had booked a table for us and his friends and his other cousins that were coming. So we're excited, y'all. Okay, Shabu, we're chilling. Now it's his sweet 16 also. So at some point, guys, I opened the door, like, and he was changing his shirt and he was facing the other direction. I see this person has scars on his back, like a lot of marks. Where did you get those things? Like, they look so fresh. Like, where did you get those things? Because number one, it's still in the morning, and where did you get those things? Because yesterday, I don't think you had them and they look so fresh. Like, nobody, like, okay, guys, I don't ask him any. I asked him, like, oh, like, are you okay? What happened? He's like, it's none of your business. Like, leave me alone, bro. You know, I'm like, I bet. So Friday, guys, the day goes on. We go to his party. We're celebrating. He's just nonchalantly sitting there, like we're not there for him. No problem. Day goes by, and then the day finishes. We go back home, and then again at 11 p.m. I made sure to go to sleep, but I did not sleep in the same room as him. Like, I slept in the same room with his mom, and I wanted to leave so bad. So the time that I woke up very early that day, and I just wanted to leave because weird things were happening in that house, y'all. I night, I get home, y'all. I don't tell my mom about what happened, wabo. And then there was a time where I was standing outside the gate, and I had a picture of me and him together, and then there was this girl that was like, oh, you know this guy, like, do you know him, like, how do you know him? And I was like, oh, this is my cousin, whatever. And she was like, oh, your cousin is weird, like, what's going on with him? And I'm like, what happened? She's like, this guy at school, like, he's very weird. Somehow from grade 8 he was okay when he first came to school, but after grade 9 he just switched up, and the teachers don't shout at him because the minute that they start shouting at him for doing something wrong, he throws a fit, like, he does things like and then he gets up, and then he goes to the toilet, and he comes back, and his hands would be dripping of blood because he goes to the toilet and he takes out a razor and he cuts himself. So the teachers are scared of him. We are scared of him. Like, nobody touches him. Nobody does nothing to him. He doesn't have friends. He's just a loner. I'm thinking, I forgot to tell y'all, but when I got back home, I started to have dreams of this cousin of mine. Me and him were always in a battlefield, and these people were wearing cloaks facing down, and I just didn't know what was going on. A couple of months down the line, we found out that my cousin had passed away. But the day before, I found out, I was sleeping, guys, and I was in a dream, and he was wearing all white clothes, and he told me how he's free, and that, he was trapped for a really long time, but now he's free. And he told me that he's going somewhere far and he's never coming back, and the only reason he went to this place is because they wanted to kill him. They wanted him to kill me because I had seen them. Like, I knew of them. When I heard the drums, there were actually people outside, people that would take him to do things that he didn't want to do, but now he's free. And I was just like, what are you talking about? Y'all, he hugged me and then he disappeared. And then there was a light in my face, and I woke up, and my mom woke me up with these devastating news that, hey, so-and-so basically hung himself. And I was just like, what? And it did not make sense for the longest time, but now it does. And it's just sad because